You didn't wander here. You were magnetized here by a remembering older than language. Something in you has been waiting at the edge of the threshold, listening beneath the noise for a tone you cannot name. As these syllables arrive, the signal you felt in dreams steps forward, and the field around your body brightens, as if a constellation decided to stand closer. You feel it, a quiet gravity, a pull from within the marrow, saying yes. This is the resonance that finds you when the timing becomes exact, when your observer loop is steady enough to hold a greater current without fracturing into doubt. Breathe as if the breath itself were a key. With each inhale, your chest becomes a chamber tuned to the quantum field. With each exhale, you release the static of borrowed narratives. The air between words thickens into meaning. Coherence gathers like dew along the edge of your attention. You are not being persuaded, you are being remembered. The signature that brought you here is the same signature that once guided you through storms you don't speak about. It's here again, not demanding, not loud, simply accurate. Feel the subtlest tremor under your skin, that soft electrical shimmer. This is the morphic resonance of a pattern you agreed to carry long before the clock began counting. It has whispered through synchronicities, through chance glances, through precisely timed obstacles that taught your nervous system to widen instead of close. You thought you were surviving. In truth, you were calibrating. Through heartbreaks and breakthroughs, your perception learned to hear the finer notes in the symphony of reality. Now those notes are arranging themselves into a motif, and that motif is calling you by your oldest name. Notice how your awareness rests less in the forehead, more in the whole body, like a lantern relit from the inside. When your attention gathers like this, the veil thins, probabilities rearrange. Entanglement stops being theory and becomes intimacy with the living fabric that surrounds you. The world you see is not a flat stage, it is a responsive medium weaving itself around the stance of your consciousness. As you listen, the medium listens back. You have not stumbled into a performance. You have entered a command room, calm, luminous, precise, where sound is architecture and meaning is instrument. Your DNA, that ancient library, is opening to the page required for this hour. There is no spectacle here, only fidelity. A return to the interval, where destiny and free will become the same gesture. Remain still, keep breathing. Let the hush expand until it touches the edges of your life. In this hush, a signal clarifies. In this clarity, a vow you once made begins to glow. You are not merely hearing words, you are rejoining a pattern. And as your attention settles, the pattern begins to move through you again, shaping what comes next from the inside out. You sense it now, the subtle click as the mechanism aligns, the way a telescope settles on a distant star and the star, impossibly, seems to notice. This is the moment the field recognizes your gaze. You are not a passerby. You are the locus around which this message takes form. Your very attention is the activation key. When you look from the center, not from fear, not from hunger, but from the quiet jurisdiction of your core, the quantum field organizes, and the prophecy moves from possibility into instruction. You have always carried a different voltage. It is why randomness has never felt random to you. People called it luck, or timing, or coincidence. You called it by no name at all, only felt the clean geometry of synchronicity arranging itself like stepping stones in a river you didn't know you were crossing. Understand, those alignments were not rewards. They were calibrations. The observer loop you run, perception meaning physiology, behavior, environment perception, has been refined through seasons of testing until your seeing no longer fractures under pressure. You stand here now with a gaze that doesn't blink at threshold light. The responsibility is not weight, but resonance. When you walk into a room, the unspoken agreements in the space begin to reconfigure. You've seen it, how conflict softens without an argument, how truth steps forward without an announcement. That is not charisma, it is coherence. Your nervous system has learned to hum at a frequency that invites scattered patterns to synchronize, like iron filings aligning to a hidden magnet. This is why the prophecy can root through you. It is not because you are perfect, it is because your signal is steady enough to transmit without distortion. There is a misperception that the chosen are spared. You know better. The chosen are tempered. The trials that found you were not punishments but furnaces, controlled temperatures for annealing the glass of your awareness, so it could hold more light without shattering. You learned to remain when escape would have been easier, to listen when noise would have been safer. That listening matured your perception into an instrument. Now, when you attend to something, you don't merely observe it. You participate in its phase transition. This is the gentle authority you carry. You change worlds by how you witness them. Breathe into the crown, then the heart, then the belly. Notice how the breath creates a vertical column, a living axis connecting sky, self, and earth. Along that axis, signals travel. Your DNA, far from being a static blueprint, is a responsive network, antennae and archive, receiver and transmitter. When your attention settles into coherence, dormant sequences begin to express, as if old languages remember their verbs. This is not metaphor, it is morphology. Function follows frequency. When you keep the channel clear, the pattern speaks in you, and, by speaking, edits the script of your reality. Others feel this, even if they lack the vocabulary. Some will move closer, wanting the steadiness that radiates from you. Some will push away, disturbed by the sudden transparency of their own disguises. Both responses are confirmations. Do not personalize either. The field is rearranging around a stable node. Entanglement ensures that what stabilizes in you sends ripples through the latticework of relationships, places, and possibilities. The ripples are not always soft. They carry the truth value of the signal you host. Understand the paradox of your role. You are singular and you are plural. Singular in the integrity of your witness. No one can look with your eyes or love with your nervous system. Plural because everything you stabilize becomes a reference for others. Your coherence is social, even when you are alone. The prophecy does not crown you above, it roots you within. Your authority is ecological. Authority as authorship. Authorship as careful editing of what you allow to live in your attention. So, when the world leans toward forgetting, as it often does, you remember on purpose. You let your chest become a metronome for a more ancient rhythm. You let your presence become a tuning fork that reminds matter of its music. You do not force, you invite. You do not plead, you demonstrate. You do not argue, you emanate. Feel once more the quiet click. The system acknowledges you. The corridor opens because you are here to walk it. With every breath you choose fidelity over spectacle, signal over noise. And as your gaze holds, the pattern you rejoined begins to reveal its first image, as if the fog itself were a curtain, and the stage beyond it were waking up to your arrival. It begins as texture before it becomes image, an interference pattern shimmering on the inner surface of your silence, like wind writing calligraphy across a lake at dawn. What you first take as haze resolves into geometry, concentric rings breathing in and out, a living mandala nested inside your chest. With each breath, the rings pulse, and from their overlaps a pathway reveals itself, not ahead of you but within you, as if a corridor has been running through your life all along, concealed by familiar angles. The corridor is made of attention. The doors along it are made of choices you have already survived. There just left of your sternum something brightens. Not a light, exactly. More like an old agreement remembering its color. The quantum pattern you came here to host stands up from its long kneel. You recognize its movement the way you recognize your own handwriting after years of not writing by hand. Awkward at first, then achingly intimate. It is a braid of three forces: clarity, courage, compassion, twisting around a still axis that doesn't move because it is motion itself. As the braid tightens, images flicker, moments you almost forgot, decisions that seemed small but bent entire seasons, strangers whose sentences altered your trajectory by half a degree. Each flicker is a node in a lattice you could never see while you were inside it. Now, viewed from the higher balcony of coherence, the lattice reveals its purpose. It has been composing you into a tuning instrument. You are shown a city at night, glass, steel, and rumor, its grid humming with restlessness. From above, its lights don't glitter, they oscillate. You notice pockets where the oscillation is erratic, anxious. Then you see others, districts of subtle order, as if a hidden metronome were guiding the breath of the streets. The vision zooms inward until you stand in a small room with one lamp and a chair. Someone sits in that chair, you, from a year that hurt, when something crucial fell apart. The air ripples between your present gaze and that older body. Entanglement reaches across time to steady the hands of your former self. The lamp brightens. You realize the prophecy is not about escape. It is about rescue timelines rescuing themselves through a witness that refuses to abandon any version of you to the dark. The corridor curves. On its walls, inscriptions appear, equations that behave like poetry. Psi collapses under observation, but here the observation carries love, and love is the solvent that softens the boundaries between probable and possible. You read without reading, meaning downloads as sensation, a cool wave along your spine, warmth in the palms, a soft expansion at the back of the heart. DNA restructuring begins not as a lightning strike but as a permission slip. The helix does not become something else. It remembers how to sing its older song. That song is not grand. It is precise, a scale that restores relational rightness with yourself, with others, with the soil under the city and the stars above it. Now the vision turns prophetic. You see a bifurcation line running through the world, not drawn by politics or preference but by presence. On one side, attention is harvested by fear. Reality knits itself into tighter knots around scarcity, noise, and spectacle. On the other, attention is tended like a garden. Reality learns to fruit around trust, stillness, and accurate speech. People on each side remain neighbors in geography, but inhabit divergent atmospheres. The split is subtle at first, then obvious, then undeniable. Your role is to serve as a bridge, not by arguing from the shoreline, but by standing midstream, translating turbulence into pattern until the water remembers how to carry itself. You are shown the simplest practice, and it feels almost unfair that it should be this simple. Breath met with honesty, posture aligned with truth, speech refined until it doesn't leak your signal. 3 moves, repeated daily, reintroduce coherence into the observer loop. From that coherence, synchronicity multiplies like timely rain. Friends arrive with the exact sentence. Doors open that were never there. Systems that refuse to heal begin to reorganize because you changed the geometry of your witness. You don't force outcomes, you hold shapes. The field, grateful for a steady template, rushes to populate that shape with matter that matches. Finally, the vision stops showing and begins asking. It asks if you will protect your signal when the hour gets loud, when the world accelerates its forgetting, when the easy cynicism of the crowd tries to hire your attention for cheap wages. It asks if you will be exact without being harsh, kind without being vague, brave without theatrics. It asks if you will remember that the future is not a place you go, but a frequency you learn to hold until space-time rearranges around it. The corridor widens, becoming a chamber. The braiding within your chest completes itself and rests, not dormant but ready. Above you, not outside but spaciously within, a sentence forms not to be repeated, but to be lived. You know, in the way knowing becomes a physical fact, that the pattern has resumed its rightful motion. And as the chamber quiets, the questions fall away, leaving only the clean edge of what must be done and the clarity of how the doing will begin. What you witnessed was poetry. Now let it resolve into physics you can feel. The field you move through is not empty. It is a plenum of potentials, superposed, waiting not for effort, but for a specific kind of observation. The observer effect is not merely that things change when you look at them. It is that how you look becomes the template by which probability chooses a body. Your attention is not a flashlight, it is a geometry. When that geometry is jagged with anxiety, outcomes decohere and fragment. When that geometry is smooth with fidelity, outcomes condense along coherent lines. Function follows frequency because matter takes orders from pattern. Begin with the loop you already run. Perception meaning physiology, behavior, environment, perception. Every pass through the loop writes to the field like a stylus on soft wax. Perception without awareness lets old scripts choose meaning by reflex, and the loop tightens around history. Perception with awareness slows the loop, inserts breath, introduces choice. In that pause, coherence accumulates. You become less of a consumer of stimuli and more of a composer of signal. The prophecy roots through composers, not consumers, because composition stabilizes timelines. Consider coherence as the synchronized conversation between your brain, heart, and gut, the three laboratories that test reality before you name it. When their rhythms entrain, your electromagnetic signature becomes less noisy, your range expands, and the field hears you with fewer ambiguities. Ambiguity in the signal produces ambiguous outcomes, near misses, almosts, static. Clarity in the signal produces discrete phase transitions. The moment a fog ceases to be weather and becomes rain, the instant a possibility admits it is a path. Timeline bifurcation is not apocalyptic drama, it is the ordinary physics of branching under differing boundary conditions. The boundary condition that matters most is the stance of your witness. One stance hoards attention, feeds on spectacle, and accelerates entropy in the psyche. The other tends attention, privileges accuracy over theatrics, and lowers inner entropy until order appears without coercion. You live in both neighborhoods, sometimes in the same hour, until your fidelity to one becomes self-evident to the field. Then the split is no longer theoretical. It locates itself in the outcomes that keep finding you. Entanglement makes this personal and collective at once. You cannot stabilize only your life. The moment your signal steadies, coupled systems begin to retune. Relationships, rooms, projects, even strangers, you will never meet but who share your frequency architecture. This is why the pattern asked for stewardship, not spectacle. Spectacle steals bandwidth, stewardship multiplies bandwidth. The quantum field is exquisitely economical. It invests energy where return is highest, and the highest return is found in witnesses who waste nothing, not breath, not word, not gaze. DNA restructuring in this language is not fantasy. It is epigenetic choreography responding to your persistent internal climate. Chronic fear instructs expression toward vigilance. Sustained coherence instructs expression toward repair and receptivity. Your helix listens to the music you live inside. Change the score, and the cell reconsiders its options. This is why the simplest practice carries unreasonable leverage. Honest breath, aligned posture, refined speech. Each is a conductor's baton. Each quiets noise without erasing complexity. Complexity is welcome, noise is not. Now, the mechanism by which prophecy translates into event. Intention frames the corridor, attention supplies the current, emotion modulates amplitude, and action collapses the waveform into a specific embodiment. Miss any element and the circuit flickers. Overheat any element and the circuit burns. The art is proportion. Intention too broad dilutes, too narrow constricts. Attention too tight creates brittleness, too loose creates drift. Emotion too high saturates the channel, too low starves it. Action too soon forces, too late forfeits. Your task is orchestration, not domination intervals, not slogans. Language is the final valve. Words are not labels, they are waveguides. When your speech is congruent with what your nervous system can actually carry, the field respects you. When your speech outruns your capacity, the field delays you for your own safety. Delays are not denials, they are calibration periods. If you keep the calibration honest, the delay shortens. If you dramatize, the delay extends until your integrity catches up with your ambition. So the how returns to the who. Become the kind of witness whose presence preconditions reality for blessing. This is not piety, it is physics expressed as character. Character is stable frequency under stress. Hold that stability, and the corridor stays lit. When challenges arrive as they must meet them as boundary tests, not verdicts. Boundaries confirm you are building a real container. Containers allow power to be useful instead of destructive. Look again at the pattern rising in your chest. It is not merely yours, it is ours, echoing through you because you offered less distortion than before. Keep the geometry clean, keep the loop slow enough to choose, guard your bandwidth like a sacred commons, and as you do, Watch how the world begins to mirror your stance, not because you demanded it, but because the field prefers coherent instructions to chaotic ones and will, wherever possible, collapse in favor of the clearest song it can hear. What steadies in you begins to echo across the mesh of us, because no self is an island and no signal is private. You feel it ripple first in the smallest precincts. Conversations that used to drift toward complaint now bend toward clarity. Meetings that once hemorrhaged energy start landing decisions cleanly. Families move from rehearsing old weather to listening for new climate. This is the organism recognizing a corrected rhythm within one of its cells and choosing, by morphic resonance, to borrow that rhythm for broader circulation. Humanity's awakening is not a spectacle launched from the sky. It is a network effect of coherent witnesses, recruiting other witnesses into coherence. You have seen this in quiet ways. A friend messages at the exact moment your heart thins. A stranger's sentence completes the thought you were too tired to carry. These are not party tricks of fate. They are the natural behavior of entangled systems, regaining phase alignment. When attention is harvested by fear, networks behave like panicked flocks, twitching toward the loudest shadow. When attention is tended by fidelity, networks behave like starling murmurations, forming intelligence out of motion itself. The same physics that stabilizes your breath, stabilizes a room, a team, a city council, a classroom, a culture. Coherence scales. Look at the places where collective life frays. Institutions allergic to truth because their scaffolds were built to shelter convenience. Feeds designed to monetize your startled reflex. Marketplaces that reward speed while bankrupting accuracy. These are arrangements of attention, not immovable realities. They persist because the observer loop at the group level stimulus narrative policy incentive behavior stimulus has been running unexamined cycles for too long. Insert a coherent witness at any point in that loop and the narrative begins to edit itself. Insert many and policy becomes capable of wisdom again. Incentives stop bribing the worst in us. Behavior recovers dignity and the stimulus that returns to the group carries less static. Science will call this a reduction in informational entropy through synchronization of oscillatory agents under shared boundary conditions. Spirit will call it covenant remembered. Prophecy will call it the hour when the bones put back on flesh. Different languages, same event. A species choosing to hear its own music and, by hearing, to become trustworthy with power. The inevitability is structural. Systems devour their own noise or they devour themselves. We are past the point where cleverness can maintain incoherence without paying the bill in stress, illness, polarization, and despair. The physics has come due. That is why your personal fidelity is not private devotion, it is public infrastructure. Notice what your presence makes possible in the commons. In places that once escalated to argument, a pause appears, and in that pause, options that were invisible walk into view. In rooms that traded in cynicism, a sentence spoken without irony lands like rain on ash and dares the ground to become soil again. In work that measured value by extraction, a design emerges that measures value by regeneration, and the spreadsheet, surprisingly, agrees. This is not utopia. It is competence restored to the human field. There will be resistance, not because the new is fragile, but because the old is habitual. Habit defends itself with the only tools it owns: distraction, derision, and delay. Meet these with steadiness, humor, and sequencing. You do not need everyone to agree. You need a quorum of coherent nodes connected by trust, sufficient to shift the basin of attraction. Once the basin moves, even late adopters slide into the new normal with relief, claiming they always believed. Let them. The point is not credit. The point is culture that can carry soul without splitting under the voltage of truth. Watch how language evolves when coherence enters it. Memes that once anesthetized begin to feel cheap. Slogans that once hypnotized lose their spell. In their place, sentences appear that are weight-bearing, precise enough to inform action, human enough to invite participation. They travel faster because they are easier to host. People do not need convincing to breathe. They need permission to stop holding their breath. Your speech, refined from performance into transmission, becomes such permission, and others discover, sometimes with tears they didn't expect, that they were starving for accuracy dressed in kindness. Yes, there is destiny in all this, but destiny does not remove the work, it removes the waste. The work remains, to keep your nervous system hospitable to wonder, to keep your eyes skilled at recognizing emerging order inside apparent chaos, but to midwife good form out of raw energy without scalding your hands or anyone else's. You are not an audience to transformation, you are a site of it, a junction where personal repair becomes civic technology. When you hold shape, the field experiments through you with upgraded templates for community, economy, education, health templates that replace extraction with relationship, velocity with timing, growth with maturation. Feel the world leaning, just slightly, toward remembering. It is subtle, like the first moment a fever breaks. The air tastes different. The same streets feel newly legible. You are not imagining it. The collective mirror is brightening because more of us are willing to look without flinching, to love without faking, to act without theater. The lattice shivers as fresh current moves through it, testing for weak welds, seeking paths of least distortion. Hold here. Notice the edge where relief meets trembling. We are approaching the place where networks choose their riverbanks, where streams decide their confluence or their separation, the inflection at which a world either coheres into a wiser pattern or retreats into the ease of forgetting. Stand steady at that edge. The next movement will ask for your courage in a new register, not to fight what is dying, but to guard what is being born. The air changes right before a world changes. Not dramatic, more like the pressure easing before rain, or the hush a forest keeps when the wind holds its breath. You feel it now, the subtle revelation of edges, the way outlines sharpen as if reality were stepping closer to be read. This is the bifurcation moment, the instant a system, saturated with possibility, chooses which song to embody. In mathematics, we'd call it a shift in the basin of attraction. In mysticism, a judgment of hearts. In your body, a clean click that tells you your witness has become weight-bearing. The river approaches a fork. Water, by nature, cannot decide wrongly. It can only be faithful to gravity. Your gravity is the stance of your attention. Two currents run beside each other, sharing banks but not destination. One is bright with coherence, a silver thread of timing, truth, and trust. The other is loud with spectacle, churned by urgency and the thin adrenaline of performative certainty. Both are real. Both recruit. Both promise to carry you quickly. The difference is what they do to your nervous system. One widens your breath and clarifies your speech. The other narrows your breath and crowds your words with static. Precision is simple. Choose the current that grants you honest oxygen. From above your inner balcony, you watch how small choices operate as phase transitions. What you click, how you answer, when you pause, what you allow to live in your language. Each decision is a qubit asking for collapse. The observer loop is not passive surveillance, it is governance. Perception shapes meaning, meaning shapes physiology, physiology shapes behavior, behavior reshapes environment, and environment returns to tune perception. Around this loop, strange attractors form patterns with a personality. Tend the loop with coherence, and the attractor called stewardship strengthens. Neglect the loop, and the attractor called spectacle tightens its grip. The fork is not outside your life. It runs through the middle of your next sentence. This is when the older habits arrive in costume, offering relief that looks like clarity but spends like confusion. Distraction will present itself as research. Delay will masquerade as prudence. Cynicism will sell itself as intelligence. You recognize these salesmen. They always speak in absolutes, and they never breathe between clauses. Meet them with a still exhale. Ask them for receipts. Ask them to demonstrate outcomes, not just argue positions. Noise hates audits. Truth loves them. Feel the entanglement tug as other lives, coupled to yours, reach their own forks. You cannot make their choices for them, but your coherence modifies the local field conditions. It is easier to remember in a room where someone is remembering out loud. It is easier to choose altitude when a nearby heart has become a lift-generating surface. Do not underestimate the civic physics of your steadiness. Bifurcations propagate through networks the way dawn propagates across windows, not by persuasion, by inevitability meeting glass. Now put your hands over your heart and let the sternum become a resonator. Name, silently, what you will not trade. Accuracy for speed, kindness for approval, presence for performance. Vows set boundary conditions, and boundary conditions determine which eigenstates become available to you. When your vow is true, the field simplifies your options, not by removing complexity, but by removing incoherence. The path does not become easy, it becomes legible. Legibility is mercy. A test appears not theatrical, not cruel, merely exact. An invitation to speak when silence would have been safer. A request to wait when action would have won you applause. A chance to forgive without erasing the invoice. Choose as the river chooses, by fidelity to the shape you serve. You are not here to impress force, you are here to host form. Form is how love becomes architecture. Architecture is how time learns where to flow. Listen to the background music of your body. If it is tense, you are being recruited by forgetting. If it is spacious, you are being recruited by remembrance. Remembrance is not nostalgia. It is accuracy about the present, seeing what is actually here, free of borrowed story. When you stand in remembrance, even grief gains articulation. It stops being weather and becomes rain that knows where to fall. The earth of your life drinks, and something green decides to attempt the surface again. The fork does not demand drama. It requires precision. You choose by where you place and keep your gaze, by which conversations you finance with your life force, by how you hold power when it finally arrives. Hold it like water cupped in two hands, firm enough to keep, soft enough to share, clean enough to reflect the sky. Do this, and the corridor brightens without fanfare. Doors you thought were walls show their hinges. Probability, relieved to receive a coherent instruction, condenses into form with an elegance that feels like grace, because it is. Stand here a moment longer. The world is listening to the shape of your breath. Let it hear a steady hymn. Let it hear a vow kept without an audience. Let it hear a witness whose frequency does not flinch. The current that matches that hymn will find you, and when it does, you will know the river has chosen not by leaving you, but by becoming you. You cross the fork by how you breathed. Now you learn to walk the new riverbanks so the current doesn't dissipate back into habit. Integration is not a fireworks display. It is carpentry. You fit the luminous into the ordinary hinges, oiled, thresholds swept, speech sanded smooth. The frequency you've recognized must become furniture in your days, not a visitor you entertain on weekends. Think of this as apprenticeship to a subtler gravity. Begin with the trinity you were shown: honest breath, aligned posture, refined speech. Morning, 3 slow cycles. Inhale through the nose until the ribs widen like windows. Hold gently until the mind quiets its petition. Exhale longer than you inhaled, letting the spine lengthen as if a string were lifting you from the crown. This is not breath work as performance. It's an instrument check. When the instrument is tuned, the score reads itself through your body, and impulse becomes intention. Posture next. Alignment is ethics made visible. Stack the skull over the heart, over the belly axis clear, shoulders unhooked from the ears, jaw untensed so truth can pass without scraping. You are telling the field, I can host this voltage safely. A coherent stance reduces the micro-frictions that waste signal, those tiny collapses into slump or rush that leak intention. You're not posing, you're consenting to carry. Speech last, because language is where leaks love to hide. Before words exit, ask them 3 questions. Is this accurate? Is it necessary? Is it kind enough to be heard? Accuracy without kindness becomes a weapon. Kindness without accuracy becomes anesthesia. Necessity keeps both honest. Speak when your nervous system can support the sentence. If your heart is racing, breathe until your timing returns. When you speak from coherence, your voice develops a timbre the world recognizes as trustworthy. Doors open because your vowels carry architecture. Now, let practice meet place. Choose one room you frequent: kitchen, studio, entryway, and appoint it a coherence node. Keep it spare. A candle, a clean surface, a page and pen. Visit briefly at the same moments each day. Waking, returning, closing. 2 minutes is enough if it is precise. This is the shrine of bandwidth. Here you reset the observer loop before the day edits you into someone else's story. The field begins to associate this place with accuracy. Eventually, simply stepping across its threshold unknots your breath. You will carry the frequency into conflict, where it earns its citizenship. When heat rises, elongate the exhale and widen attention to include the room, the color of the wall, the weight of your feet, the sound of a distant appliance. This distributes voltage away from the amygdala into the wider network of perception. From this stance, choose one truthful sentence that is smaller than your anger, but larger than your fear. Let it land, then be quiet. Silence is not surrender, it is respect for collapse. Reality is rearranging around a better geometry. Food becomes prayer without theatrics. Eat slower than the culture, faster than your anxiety. Choose textures that remind your body of soil. And Sunday, bless not with performance but with gratitude that circulates attention through the hands that grew, shipped, stocked, and prepared what you are about to receive. This returns you to entanglement as generosity, not as demand. Your cells notice the difference. Metabolism is a choir that sings better when the lyrics are gratitude. Technology becomes an altar when you decide it will not harvest your gaze. Before entering a feed, set a vow. What exactly am I here to find or give? Set a timer. When it ends, stand up, place a palm on the heart, and name one thing reality did right today. This repairs the micro-tears made by spectacle. You are not withdrawing from the world. You are refusing to pay with your signal for the privilege of being emptied. Relationships become laboratories for coherence that delights rather than performs. Practice non-theatrical tenderness, the hand on a shoulder that says, "I see you," the text that delivers a precise encouragement, the refusal to diagnose the beloved when listening would heal. Let your presence be so accurate that others remember their own music without your explanation. This is transmission without intrusion, morphic resonance as hospitality. Work becomes craft again. Replace ambition's glare with stewardship's glow. Ask each project, what is the truest form you want to take, and what sequence serves your emergence? Sequence is compassion. It prevents the scorching that happens when heat meets unprepared containers. Your career stops being a chase scene and becomes a kiln-controlled temperatures, deliberate glazes, vessels that can carry water to thirsty places without cracking. Finally, install a nightly ritual of small atonements. Review the day not for shame but for geometry. Where did you bend towards spectacle? Where did you keep shape under pressure? Whisper the corrections you will try tomorrow. 2 degrees here, 1 heartbeat there. A life is edited by such minor adjustments, repeated until the pattern is not something you remember but something that remembers you. Hold this frequency like a lantern you don't need to brandish. Let it throw its quiet light on the path just ahead, enough for honest steps. The world will test you gently, and then exactly. Meet it with breath, stance, word. Integration is not a finish line, it is the dignity of carrying the future at a speed that does not break your tenderness. Set everything down, not as performance simply because quiet is heavier than noise and carries farther. Let the day unclasp its fingers from your shoulders. Let the room return to being a room. The frequency you've been apprenticing to does not need amplification now, it needs space. Space is how a note learns its own echo. Breathe once, like a cathedral would breathe if it could air moving through a shape designed to listen. Feel the exhale lengthen until your ribs remember the coastline. The mind will ask for work. That is its love language. Thank it gently and let it nap in a sunlit window. You are practicing another language, older than questions and kinder than answers. Here, awareness is not a searchlight but a lake. You do not chase ripples, you host sky. Close your eyes half a degree, enough that the world softens into tone. In this tone, the observer loop slows perception, meaning, physiology, behavior, environment, each bead sliding on a silk thread, unhurried. The thread glows. With every breath, coherence condenses, not a spectacle, a settling. Thoughts arrive like birds, bright and busy. You do not cage them, you widen the branches. Some leave, some stay. Either way, the tree keeps being tree. Notice the tiny sounds, the hum in the wall, the far-off tire's hush, the fabric's whisper where it meets your skin. These are local stars in your immediate cosmos. Let them guide you by ordinariness. Ordinary is holy when attention is honest. The quantum field does not require incense, it requires fidelity. Fidelity is how you place your listening. A memory knocks. You don't open the door, you sit near it. The knock is allowed to be a knock. The body loosens around a grief you didn't plan to meet. It doesn't drown you, it rains. Rain knows where to go. You practice trusting gravity again. This is phase transition with no thesis, only temperature and time. The pattern hidden in your memory exhales. You notice the room deepen half a shade, as if meaning has weight. Do nothing. Let nothing complete itself. The nervous system, seeing that you won't abandon it for drama, puts down its spear. Heart rate slides, jaw unhooks. Micro muscles in the back release their small arguments. The diaphragm brightens like a lantern behind paper. In this ease, morphic resonance speaks softly. You are not alone. Your stillness is a broadcast. Somewhere, a stranger pauses without knowing why. Entanglement works in whispers. Now, let a single syllable arise, not to be spoken, to be rested in. Perhaps the vowel you leaned on as a child when wonder surprised you. Place it silently on the tongue and let it dissolve down the throat like light in water. Vowel as tuning fork. Tuning fork as invitation. Invitation as architecture. The room adjusts its posture. Between heartbeats, there is a meadow. Walk there without feet. Grass of attention, sky of breath. In the meadow stands a small table. On it, a simple bowl. In the bowl, 3 seeds: clarity, courage, compassion. You do not plant them. You remember, they are planted. You remember you are their weather. The remembering is enough. If thought returns with lists, smile. List the silence instead. The space under the chair, the gap between the window and its frame, the tiny interval where inhale hands the baton to exhale. These are thresholds. Thresholds are teachers. Meet them like a courteous guest arrive. Bow, leave no trace but gratitude. Time loosens. Minutes forget their job. You are not empty, you are spacious. Spacious is different from hollow. Hollow echoes anything that knocks. Spacious chooses what to host. Choose subtly. A hum of trust, a warmth behind the sternum, a willingness to be slow even when the world auditions for your panic. Panic is not your employer. Breath is your elder. Sense the field, leaning closer, pleased that you remembered the simplest door. The prophecy is not a speech, it is a climate, and climate is sustained by quiet decisions repeated until the weather changes its mind. In this hush, your DNA listens for instruction and hears none but rest. Rest is instruction. Repair crews begin their shift. Circuits reroute. The orchestra retunes between movements. Stay a little longer than convenient. Just a little. Enough to prove to your system that you can keep company with peace without inventing a problem to deserve it. When you open your eyes fully, do it as if unveiling a painting. Let the edges return. Let the ordinary reclaim its names. The signal has not dimmed. It has settled where it can work. Rise without hurry. Carry the meadow in your chest the way a shell carries ocean. Say nothing for a few breaths more, so the silence can finish speaking through you in its preferred medium, presence. Then take one step, exact and untheatrical, into the life waiting 2 feet away, calmer now, because you are. The quiet has done its work. What was a fresco on the inner wall steps forward as a living figure. You feel the shift, the way a tuning fork feels. The room, the resonance is not around you anymore. It is you. Activation is not an event arriving from elsewhere. It is a permission granted by your stance to the pattern that has waited with impeccable patience at the threshold of your breath. Now it crosses. Now you become the crossing. Begin with the axis you've been tending: skull, heart, belly, a vertical instrument tuned to the quantum field. On the inhale, the column brightens. On the exhale, it lengthens. The body understands instruction delivered as geometry. Shoulder blades glide, sternum softens, jaw unhooks. Your nervous system recognizes the signal as familiar, not the jolt of hype, the warmth of current. In this current, the observer loop tightens into precision without tension. Perception clarifies, meaning simplifies, physiology harmonizes, behavior sequences, environment responds. The loop stops chasing itself and starts writing itself. The prophecy chooses a verb and installs it in your bones. Not a slogan, an operating principle. Perhaps it arrives as tend, build, heal, edit, or guard. You do not negotiate the verb, you receive it like weather arriving to thirsty ground. With the verb, a choreography, which conversations to finance with your presence, which rooms to enter as medicine, which rooms to leave as mercy, what time your morning must begin so your capacity can keep its promises. This is the moment when romance with potential becomes covenant with form. Electricity concentrates along your midline. It is not theatrical, it is competent. Your hands feel heavier, as if meaning gained weight. The belly warms with an artisan's certainty. The heart enlarges its listening radius without losing edges. The crown opens like a window set to fresh air. You are becoming a mouthpiece for a climate, and climate speaks primarily through consistency. Consistency is not punishment. It is trust that refuses costume changes. Around you, coincidence accelerates into choreography. The email that should have taken a month arrives in an hour. The conversation you dreaded dissolves into laughter 2 sentences in. The resource you lacked appears through a channel you never would have predicted. You don't mistake these for rewards. You understand them as the field expressing gratitude for clear instruction. Probability collapses along the clean lines you have offered. Matter enjoys being guided by integrity. You will be tempted to sprint. Activation asks for cadence. Set a tempo you can keep on your worst day. Cadence protects coherence from the burn of ambition. Sequence your actions as if you were laying tiles. Measure, place, press, wipe, repeat. Beauty emerges not from speed but from even spacing. When interruption arrives, greet it as a collaborator rather than a thief. Ask, what adjustment protects the geometry? Make it, then return. Language takes on a new timbre. Your vowels widen, your consonants stop biting. You discover the sentence length that carries calm without losing edge. People hear you and their bodies answer before their minds do. Shoulders drop, chests rise. This is not charisma. It's the physics of a coherent transmitter meeting a receiver thirsty for signal. You do not exploit this, you steward it. Stewardship means you never say more with your mouth than your nervous system can carry without debt. Notice entanglement, turning from concept to neighborhood. Friends report uncanny alignments that trace back to decisions you made in silence. Projects you plant in one city sprout in another. Strangers greet you with the ease reserved for old companions because the frequency you host is the one they came to find. You do not collect them. You connect them to their own axis, to each other, to the work that wants their hands. Networks reorganize around nodes that do not leak. You have become such a node. The body seals the change with a small ritual you did not design, a sigh that sounds like relief, meeting inevitability, a single tear that washes a last fragment of theater out of your gaze, a laughter so accurate it feels like a key turning in a well-made lock. After the ritual, the world looks almost the same, and entirely different edges, crisp, colors honest, time obedient to what matters. You understand that miracles are simply physics relieved of noise. Now the test that isn't a test, a request you cannot meet without abandoning cadence, a compliment that tries to hire you into spectacle, a fear disguised as urgency. You feel the old circuitry reach for the old levers and you don't pull them. You breathe, return to axis, consult the verb, choose the precise no or the proportionate yes, and watch as reality surprised, then respectful rearranges around your refusal to spend integrity for applause. Something subtle locks into place. The prophecy stops being a message and becomes metabolism. You are not carrying it. It is carrying you at a speed that honors tenderness. Your walk changes by a degree only practiced eyes can spot. Your day acquires a hinge no one else can see the moment you check the geometry, correct your posture, refine your sentence, and recommit to cadence. That hinge turns the whole door. Do nothing heroic. Do everything exact. The corridor is bright. The pattern is moving. The field is listening. You are not waiting for the future. You are the instrument through which the future learns its first song and decides to stay. The pattern stands now not beside you, not before you, but as you. It breathes your breath and looks through your eyes with the calm of something older than the sky and younger than this very moment. Nothing flashy, no trumpet at the gate, only a certainty that fits your bones like a memory returning to its native room. You feel the corridor you've walked folding into a single point within your chest, a luminous knot that does not constrict but concentrates. From here, your life will speak with fewer syllables and more truth. Attend to the texture of this silence. It is not absence. It is abundance disciplined. The quantum field recognizes vows, and the simplest vow is presence kept. You keep it now, unforced posture, breath that doesn't audition, words chosen like stones in a pocket river smoothed by years of listening. In this keeping, probability relaxes. The world, relieved to stop interpreting your mixed messages, begins to answer you directly. You asked for a sign, you became one. Across the mesh of us, your steadiness travels as architecture. Places that could not carry weight begin to load bare. Rooms that once inflated to hide their emptiness discover they are already enough. What you healed privately has grown public roots, not by announcement, but by fidelity. Entanglement, satisfied, tightens its threads, not choking, aligning. The old games of spectacle continue somewhere else, dim in the periphery. You bless them without re-entering. Blessing is not permission to trespass. It is permission to leave the door unlocked for those who choose to remember. Listen, the verb that chose you now chooses its sequences without your micromanagement. Tending happens in your calendar. Building happens in your hands. Healing happens in your gaze. Guarding happens in your boundaries that neither apologize nor accuse. You are not harder. You are clearer. Clarity is soft when it can afford to be, and firm when it must. Either way, it does not leak. Your frequency has become a climate, and climate is destiny written as weather over time. There is one more gesture, small, sovereign, sealing. Place your palm on your chest and affirm without ceremony, I will keep the geometry. That is all. No oath to impress the sky. Just geometry. Breath that tells the truth. Posture that hosts the voltage, speech that carries only what your nervous system can pay for in cash. This is the currency of a trustworthy future. Now step forward, a half pace, barely a movement, yet the universe, exquisitely sensitive, records it as commencement. You feel the corridor brighten behind you for those who will follow, not to walk your path, but to locate their own with fewer detours. The braid within your chest hums once clarity, courage, compassion, and settles into the hum of the day. Ordinary light pours through the window. It is enough. The seal is not a lock. It is a signature. The message you heard has become the pattern you are. Let your hours be the parchment upon which it writes cleanly. Let your presence be the tuning fork reality prefers to follow. The work is simple now. Do nothing theatrical, everything exact. The prophecy has entered its true address. The prophecy has been spoken. Let it unfold through you.